Hello everyone, I am Jonathan Little for PokerNews.com. Today we have another hand from one of my students from 1-3 No Limit Hold'em. Let's take a look. Here we have a situation where we're against a player who previously had a pretty obvious bluff spot, and they did not bluff in that obvious bluff spot, okay? That's what's happening in the low jack here. He raises to $10, folds around to us in the big blind with 6-5 of hearts. This is another example of a situation where if the rake is high in your cash game, like say they're going to take $5 out of the pot if we call, well, we should probably just fold. But if the rake is small, say they're going to take $1 or $2 or $3, it's probably fine to stick around and see the flop. So we do call with our 6-5 of hearts in the big blind. Flop comes queen, 5-2, 1 heart. We're going to check. If our opponent bets, we have a pretty easy call. You may say, didn't you just say the opponent doesn't bluff? Well, that was a scenario on the river where the opponent had an 8-eye and elected to not bluff. That doesn't mean they're not going to continuation bet with a wide range on boards that are good for them. Most people know that they should continuation bet pretty frequently because most players do not defend so well against continuation bets from out of position. So they're going to continuation bet frequently. Knowing that, what should we do with our 5? Well, I think this is a pretty easy call. If we raise, our opponent's, well, who knows what the opponent's actually going to do if they're not particularly great, but they are probably going to not fold a hand better than our 5. Like say they have pocket 7s, they'll probably call. Now, if you think you can get your opponent to fold out literally everything worse than a queen, like pocket jacks and worse, you should be check raising a lot. And funny enough, in these small stakes cash games and in small stakes tournaments, a strong exploit is to check raise frequently because most people will not defend nearly often enough. They really do continue with top pair or better and draws. Anyway, this hand, though, very obvious marginal made hand should be called, which we do. Turns a 6 of spades, which is great. You may say, fine, let's lead. Let's bet into the flop aggressor. Well, the times you want to lead are when the turn is very good for your range. And you have to ask, is the 6 actually great for my range and terrible for my opponent? And it turns out the answer is no. And the reason it's not is because if you think about it, who has all the nut flushes in their range? And who has all of the good king-high flushes in their range? Well, that's our opponent. Our opponent would raise every suited ace, the good suited kings, they would bet the flop with them, and here they would be. We, on the other hand, would check raise with some of those spade draws. Therefore, we don't have those in our range. Also, we would 3-bet ace-king and ace-queen suited preflop, so we don't have those either. So this is a scenario where, yes, we have the best hand a lot, but we still lack what is referred to as the nut advantage. I discussed this thoroughly in the Cash Game Masterclass at pokercoaching.com/premium. So make sure you check that out, assuming you play cash games and want to learn how to play good, fundamentally sound poker. So since we lack the nut advantage, we are going to want to check with pretty much our entire range here. We check. If it goes check, check, we just have the best hand almost every time. If we face a bet, well, we have an easy call. You may say, why not raise? Aren't we worried about protecting our hand? The answer is no. We can't really get protection here. The only way to get protection from a spade draw is to check raise big. Again, the problem with check raising big is the opponent has all of the flushes in their range that are never, ever, ever, ever folding that we are almost dead against. So we do not get to check raise in this spot. We have to call and go from there. Now, if your opponent is really weak, really straightforward, then maybe you can check raise to something like $80 and then fold if they go all in on you. But the problem with that is that when you raise small, some people are going to look at that and think, all right, this player raised small. I'm going to now go all in with my ace of spades, jack of diamonds, because, why not? And the problem with this is you just don't know what your opponents are going to do. So when you don't know what your opponents are going to do, you just want to play the fundamentally sound strategy. The only real read we have here is that our opponent did not bluff in an obvious bluff spot earlier, which, if anything, should make you think that their range is actually stronger than normal and usually not tilted towards bluffs. It's usually more tilted towards value. So if the opponent's range is slightly more tilted towards value than normal, we definitely don't want to raise this hand. So anyway, we do call. River's an 8, which is pretty nice. If it goes check, check, we win every time. This time we check and the opponent bets $100. Oh, that's not good. So what does my student do in this scenario? This is somewhere between a call and a fold. You may say, fold 2 pair? What are you talking about? Well, if this player actually does not bluff nearly often enough on the river, when they bet the river in this scenario, they're going to show up with a flush a lot, and they're going to show up with sets a lot. Now, the problem is that they may also be value betting aces and kings and ace queen and maybe even king queen. Although, a lot of players in the small stakes games do not value bet thin at all on the river because they fear the flush. They may bet the turn for what they refer to as protection. They're trying to get you to fold a random spade, but they're not going to continue betting the river because they think you're going to fold every hand worse than their pocket aces, which may or maybe not is true. Is that even English? It's tough to do these videos live in one take. Such is life. So anyway, in the spot, I think this is somewhere between a fold and a call. I typically just err towards calling here, but if my student does find a fold, I don't hate it, assuming we think this player actually never does bluff. Now, you have to be careful with the idea that I saw this player not bluff once, therefore I don't expect them to ever bluff again. Because you don't know, right? Maybe they had a read on the opponent last time that made them think they should not bluff, and maybe the read was right or wrong. It doesn't matter. Maybe they don't bluff with 8 high, but they, for whatever, the 8-7 offsuit for a missed straight draw, but they will bluff with the ace of spades. Maybe they like bluffing with blockers. Who knows what the opponent's doing? Because we don't really have any clear way of knowing what the opponent's doing, I'm typically going to call here because just because we saw one bluff does not mean that they never bluff. It just means they didn't bluff that one time. And also, they could be overvaluing a worse made hand like aces, kings, ace, queen, or king, queen. But I'm really torn. I don't think there's a real clear answer here. If I had a hand like queen 10, I would definitely fold. If I had king, queen, I would definitely fold. The 6-5, I think, is very, very close. And I think you can go either way to the point that it doesn't matter a ton. This time our hero does fold. We do not get to see what the opponent has. And it's probably just a good fold, but it's tough to know. There are going to be some spots in poker where there is no clearly definitive answer because you cannot clearly define your opponent's range. And you have to be okay with that. You have to be comfortable with that. One thing I will say, though, is that in most 1-3 no-limit cash games, when people who are generally passive raise pre-flop, bet the flop, bet the turn, and bet the river, they think they have the best hand. So if our opponent thinks they have the best hand, how does this bad two-pair fare? Not too great. It's a bad bluff catcher. And if your opponent doesn't bluff quite often enough, seems like an okay spot to fold. So that's going to be it for today. Hope you all have a fantastic week. If you like this video, please click like, please click subscribe. And if you want to study poker more, check out my training site, pokercoaching.com. I'm not the only one there making courses and classes and homework and quizzes. We have many, many other world-class pros. Just the other week, we had Draft Ganger, literally one of the best players in the world. He was #1 in the world online recently, streaming privately for the members. We have Jonathan Jaffe, World Poker Tour champion. He makes classes on a regular basis. Faraz Jaka, he's been streaming for us as well and making classes. Also, James Romero, he was top 10 in the world before the virus happened. Who knows where he is now? Well, I know he's still around, but I don't know if he's in the top 10 because the ratings got all screwed up. But we have a lot of world-class players there making content for the students, and if you're not there learning, you're getting left behind, and I do not want to see you left behind. So go make use of your time and improve your poker skills. Good luck, have fun, and I'll talk to you next time.